The wind howled like a wild animal across the icy land. Snow fell hard, sharp like tiny needles against the skin. Jacob pulled his thick coat tighter and kept walking. He was alone on this frozen planet, doing repairs on an old radio tower before the storm got worse. But now the storm was here, and he was trapped in it. His boots crunched through the snow with each step. He could barely see. Everything was white. His face was frozen, and even his gloves were stiff from cold. He needed to find shelter and fast. Then he heard it, a sound, very soft, very distant. It came again, a weak, broken cry. Not the wind, not a machine, a child. Jacob stopped. He held his breath. The wind blew again, loud and cruel, but between the gusts, there it was, a small cry, shaking, sad, frightened. He turned toward the sound. "Hello?" he shouted. No answer, only the wind. Still he moved toward it. Each step deeper into the storm made his legs feel heavier. Snow clung to him, the cold bit harder. But that cry, it kept pulling him forward. Behind a large broken rock, he finally saw something, a small shape, huddled, curled up. It was not human, it was a child, but not from Earth. The skin was soft and pale blue, nearly the same color as the snow. The child had thin arms, long fingers, and glowing eyes filled with tears. Their clothes were torn and wet. Their feet were bare, and they were shaking so much, Jacob thought they might stop breathing. "Oh my God," he whispered. The child looked, and panicked. They tried to crawl back but couldn't even move properly. Their legs were stiff, their lips were turning purple. Their tears froze on their cheeks. Jacob knelt down slowly and removed his gloves. His hands trembled from cold, but he reached out gently. "It's okay," he said. "I won't hurt you." The child stared at him. Their eyes were wide, with fear, but also hope. Jacob took off his thick outer coat and wrapped it around the child. The child gasped from the sudden warmth and buried their face into it, still crying. "You're freezing," Jacob said. "How long have you been out here?" The child didn't answer. They only pointed, back into the storm. "Someone else? Is there more of you?" he asked. "Family?" The child nodded slowly. Jacob looked toward the direction the child pointed. The storm was worse that way, dangerously cold. He couldn't even see 10 steps ahead. He checked the child's body. No major injuries, but they were weak. If he left now to go looking for the others, this one might die before he got back. He had to make a choice. Stay here and protect this one, or risk everything and search deeper. He looked at the child. They were trying to speak now. Small sounds. Broken words. Mama. Cold. Mama. Jacob's heart squeezed tight. He looked around quickly and spotted a shallow snowbank nearby. Not perfect, but enough to build a windbreak for the moment. He pulled out his emergency heat pad from his pack, activated it, and placed it against the child's chest inside the coat. Then, using a tarp, he built a small shelter wall around them. "There," he whispered. "We're safe. For now." The child reached out and gripped Jacob's sleeve tightly. So small, so fragile. He wrapped his arms around them, adding his body heat. But even as he sat there, trying to keep the child alive, his eyes kept drifting toward the storm. Who else was out there? How long did they have? The storm didn't stop. Snow kept falling. The wind screamed louder. Inside the small shelter Jacob had built with his tarp and coat, the little alien child sat close to him. Their face was still pale. Their eyes were red from crying. But now they were quiet, watching him. Jacob gave them a few drops of warm water and wrapped the coat tighter. The heat pad helped, but the child was still shaking. They had lost so much body heat, and he could tell. This little one had almost given up. "What's your name?" Jacob asked softly. The child blinked. Their mouth opened. But no sound came. Not a single word. "Can you speak?" he asked again. No answer. The child looked confused, almost like they wanted to talk, but couldn't. Mute, Jacob whispered. Or just too scared. He tried not to push. The child was traumatized, clearly. Maybe it was the cold, maybe fear, maybe something worse. Then the child pointed again, back into the storm. Their tiny hands shook as they reached out, trembling. Jacob leaned in. You're trying to tell me something. The child brought their hands to their chest, made a shape, then pointed away again. Someone else? Jacob guessed. A parent? The child nodded fast. Then they suddenly grabbed Jacob's wrist with surprising strength and tried to pull him toward the open snow. You want me to go out there? But it's dangerous. I can't leave you alone. But the child's eyes said, something else, if you don't, they'll die. Jacob looked out. The snow was thicker now. Even standing 5 feet away could be deadly without protection. He took a deep breath. Okay, he said. We'll do this together. He picked up the child carefully and wrapped them inside his coat again. Then he grabbed a second heat pad from his bag and pressed it between the layers. I need you to stay awake, Jacob said. If you fall asleep, I might not be able to wake you again. You hear me? The child stared at him and gave a tiny nod. Jacob tied his scarf around, both of them to seal in warmth. Then he stepped out of the shelter. The cold slammed into him like a hammer. Instantly, his eyes began to water. Snow whipped into his face. He adjusted his goggles and lowered his head. Show me where, he said. The child, bundled close against his chest, slowly raised a finger. That way. Jacob moved, step by step, through the white death. Time felt broken in the storm. Jacob didn't know how long he had been walking. Minutes? Hours? Suddenly the child tapped his chest. Jacob stopped. The child pointed left, toward a rocky slope half covered in ice. It looked like it had collapsed recently. Was someone under there? Jacob set the child down carefully, wrapping them in the tarp, then ran to the rocks. He began digging with his gloved hands. 1 rock, 2, 3. His fingers were numb, but he didn't stop. Then, he saw something. A hand. Blue. Frozen. He dug faster. Soon a face appeared. It was another alien, an adult female. Her eyes were closed. Her body covered in frost. She wasn't moving. Jacob checked her neck. No pulse. No, he whispered. Then, faint. Barely there. A heartbeat. Still alive, he gasped. He pulled her free and dragged her back to the child. The moment the child saw her, they let out a soft noise, a half cry, half whimper. Mama. Jacob had no time to waste. He put the heat pad on her chest, rubbed her hands, and gently tried to get her breathing again. Come on, he begged. Don't give up. Your child needs you. Minutes passed. Then, the woman coughed. Weak, dry, but real. Her eyes fluttered, open. She saw the child. She tried to speak, but only a whisper came. Jacob smiled. Welcome back. The alien mother was breathing now, but only just. Jacob had wrapped her in all the warm cloth he had left. The child sat beside her, holding her hand, whispering soft alien words, maybe names, maybe memories. Snow kept falling, but Jacob had built a thicker barrier around them. The storm had calmed a little. Still, time was running out. They couldn't stay here forever. The mother was too weak to walk. The child couldn't survive another hour in this cold. Jacob looked toward the wide white landscape. He had to find help, or a place with more warmth. Anything. Then he spotted it, just beyond the fallen rocks where the mother had been trapped. Small thin tracks in the snow, not made by boots, not made by any creature he knew. Tiny bare feet. Jacob knelt beside the tracks. They looked old, half covered by fresh snow, but they didn't lead toward this cave. They led away. Another one? He whispered. Another child? He looked at the little alien beside him. They didn't react. Either they didn't know, or they were too tired to say. He had to check. Jacob stood and took a few careful steps, following the trail. He didn't go far, just enough to see where it went. It curved around a rock hill, then disappeared behind a tall patch of ice-covered trees. His gut twisted. He had already saved 2 lives today. Could there be a third? He looked back. The child's glowing eyes stared at him with silent hope. The mother was barely conscious. Jacob had 1 small shelter, 2 heat pads left, and almost no energy. But something in his heart pushed him forward. He would check. The wind picked up again as he moved through the trees. The tracks became harder to follow. Some had vanished under thick ice. But then, he saw something. A shape. Small. Still. Lying in the snow. Jacob rushed forward and dropped to his knees. It was another alien child, smaller than the first one. Their skin was grayish-blue, their eyes were closed, they looked peaceful. Too peaceful. No, Jacob breathed. Please don't be. He touched the neck. Cold. No movement. Then faintly, a twitch. A weak sound. Still alive. Hold on. He whispered. He wrapped the tiny body in his scarf and coat and lifted them carefully. This one felt lighter. Maybe not older than 3 Earth years. So fragile. So cold. Jacob ran back to the others. When the child saw the new sibling in Jacob's arms, they gasped and crawled forward. Sina, the older child whispered. Sina? Jacob asked. Is that her name? The child nodded fast. Their hands were shaking. The alien mother opened her eyes again. When she saw the baby girl, her lips moved, but no sound came out. Tears slid down her face. Jacob placed the baby between them and activated the final heat pad. 3 lives, 1 human. Now what? He checked his wrist device. Still no signal. No help coming. He had one last option. His backup shelter pod. It was an old emergency pod he had left a mile away during his inspection route. If he could carry all 3 back, they could survive, but the storm wasn't over. The mother couldn't walk and Jacob only had 2 arms. Still, he had to try. He used rope to tie the tarp around the mother like a sling. He strapped the older child to his front with belts from his supply bag. He cradled the baby in his coat, close to his heart. Then he stood. Barely. His knees shook. But he moved. 1 step. 2 steps. Snow crunched beneath him. Wind howled around him. He whispered, "Just hold on, please." The sky grew darker. Storm clouds boiled above. The cold pierced deeper than ever before. But Jacob never stopped walking. He had seen death too many times on too many planets. He wouldn't let it take these ones. Not today. Jacob's body screamed in pain. Every step through the ice-covered path felt like lifting a mountain. Snow pressed against his legs. The cold stabbed his bones. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. The alien mother was tied gently to his back, her breath shallow against his shoulder. The older child clung to his chest, eyes closed, face pressed into his coat. In his arms, the baby girl, Sena, lay bundled, tight, her tiny face hidden under layers of fabric. 3 lives, and only he could carry them now. The wind roared again. It almost pushed him off balance. He staggered, slipped, but didn't fall. Not this time. Ahead through the white fog, a shape appeared. Round. Metallic. Frosted over. The emergency pod. He had reached it. Jacob dropped to his knees beside the pod door. His fingers were numb. He punched in the code. The old hatch groaned, ice cracking as it opened. Warm yellow light spilled into the snow, a beacon of life in the dead white world. He gently laid Sina down inside on the soft thermal blanket. Then he lowered the older child, who whimpered but didn't open their eyes. Last, he untied the alien mother and carried her in. Once all 3 were inside, Jacob shut the hatch. Heat Silence. Safety. He fell backward, gasping. Minutes passed before he moved again. He placed oxygen patches on their necks, heated gel around their limbs, activated the medical scanner. The screen blinked. Mother, hypothermic. Weak pulse. Organ slowdown. Older child, stabilized. Severe fatigue. Infant, critical. Body temp rising slowly. He sat beside them, watching every breath. But something felt wrong. He looked at the mother again. Her skin was fading. Not just pale. It was almost translucent. He leaned closer. The scanner blinked again. Unknown energy. Signature detected. Jacob narrowed his eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. Suddenly, the mother's eyes opened. Not weak. Glowing. She grabbed his hand. Her grip was ice cold, but powerful. Jacob froze. The older child gasped awake. The baby let out a soft cry. The mother's lips moved. No sound came. But Jacob saw the words, not in English, not in any language he knew, but somehow he understood. "You have awakened it." Jacob blinked. What? The light from her body flickered. Not just skin, something deep inside her chest, like fire under ice. And then, it happened. She began to change, not shape, but energy, as if something inside her had been locked away, sealed, frozen for too long. Her body shivered, not from cold, but from release. And then, she collapsed again. Jacob's scanner beeped. Energy pulse detected. Origin, the mother warning, biological transformation. Halted, oxygen low, he scrambled to check her vitals. Still breathing. Barely. He looked at the children, scared, confused, and suddenly, he understood. This wasn't just a normal mother. She wasn't just a survivor. She was something more. And someone had tried to bury that power in the cold, literally beneath the ice. Someone had wanted her to die, without waking up, but the child had saved her, and Jacob had brought her back. He turned to the communication console. Signal was weak, but maybe just enough. He sent a pulse, a distress code. Then he sat beside the alien mother again, holding her hand. "You're not just anyone, are you?" he whispered. "What are they hunting you for?" Outside, the storm howled louder. Jacob looked through the frosted window. Something moved out there, a dark shadow, too large for a man, too fast for wind, and it was coming straight toward them. Jacob stared out the small, round window of the emergency. Puddicombe and the snow swirled like angry ghosts outside, but between those waves of white, something moved. Not the wind, not the storm, something alive. Tall, dark, quiet. It was watching. Jacob's heartbeat slowed. He leaned closer to the window, but the figure was gone. He turned to the alien mother, still unconscious but breathing. The older child sat beside her, holding the baby sister, both awake now, both trembling, not from the cold but from fear. They had seen it too. Jacob knelt beside the console and pressed the scanner again. It swept the area around the pod. Life form detected. Unknown species. Distance, 23 meters. His stomach dropped. "Not good," he whispered. He grabbed his weapon. A short-range plasma cutter, not made for battle but better than nothing. He dimmed the pod lights. The children huddled quietly. Then, a sound. Soft. Scratch. 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 Something was circling the pod. Jacob crept toward the door, weapon ready. The sound stopped. Silence. He waited. Then, bang. The pod shook. The baby cried out. The older child covered her mouth quickly. Jacob held his breath. A second bang, then a low growl, almost like a voice, but twisted, garbled, as if it were trying to speak but not with a tongue. Jacob activated the pod's external camera. At first, nothing. Then it stepped into view. His blood ran cold, a tall, bony creature, covered in black frost. Its arms were too long. Its face was hidden behind sharp ice plates, and its eyes, bright, glowing yellow. It stared right into the lens. The scanner flashed again. Warning, hunter-class predator, biological match, extinct species. Extinct? Jacob whispered. He looked at the children. What kind of storm did I walk into? The creature slammed the side of the pod again. Jacob steadied his grip. Then, without warning, it vanished from view. Jacob waited. Sweat dripped down his neck, even in the cold. Suddenly, silence. No footsteps, no growls, nothing. He turned back, toward the children, and froze. The alien mother's eyes were open, wide, glowing. She sat up, though barely able to move before. Jacob stepped toward her. "You're awake." She raised one hand and pointed to the door. Her voice was cracked, dry, but clear. "You must not open it." "I wasn't going to." "It hunts us," she whispered. "It smells power." Jacob looked confused. "Power? You mean yours?" She nodded. "When I froze, it stopped following. Now I live. It returns." He realized the truth. That creature wasn't hunting food. It was hunting her. The storm wasn't just nature. It was part of the trap. Outside, the pod shook again. Harder. The older child cried, "Mama!" and reached for her. The mother clutched, both children tightly. Jacob raised the plasma cutter, aiming at the door. "Let it try," he growled. The mother looked at him. "You will die, not before it goes through me first." Suddenly, a different alarm went off. Alert. Signal received. Rescue ship 12 minutes away. Jacob's eyes lit up. Rescue is coming. But the mother didn't smile. She shook her head. "It will not. Let us leave." Outside, the snow exploded upward. The shadowy figure leaped into the air and landed on the pod roof. The metal creaked. The baby screamed. Jacob stepped over them all and aimed upward. "Come on, then," he whispered. "Come see what humans are made of." The roof of the emergency pod groaned above Jacob's head. Metal creaked. Ice cracked. The predator was on top. The alien mother clutched her daughters close, whispering something in their ear. A soft chant, or maybe a goodbye. The older child stared up in silent terror. The baby whimpered, too weak to cry. Jacob kept his back to the pod's sealed hatch. His plasma cutter shook in his hand. Then, clang. A sharp claw pierced through the pod's roof, just inches from Jacob's head. It sliced through metal like paper. Steam rose from the hole as snow blew in. Jacob aimed and fired. PZ zap! The plasma bolt hit the claw, and the creature shrieked, a sharp, grating sound that made the children cry out. Another hole appeared, then another. The creature was tearing through the pod. "Get back!" Jacob shouted. He helped the mother and children crawl into the storage chamber at the back of the pod and locked the inner door behind them. Then he turned around. The ceiling split open, and the hunter dropped inside. It was worse up close. The creature stood hunched, its spine jagged with frost-covered bone. Its arms were long, thin, and armed with claws longer than knives. Its face was a skull of ice, with black veins pulsing underneath, and its eyes, burning yellow, locked on Jacob. The pod scanner screeched, "Warning, lethal threat detected." "Engage escape mode immediately." Jacob didn't run. He fired again, straight into the creature's chest. The blast hit, ice exploded, but the creature kept coming. Jacob ducked as a claw slashed through the air. Sparks flew. He rolled across the floor, grabbed a broken metal rod, and used it like a shield. The creature roared. Jacob jumped back, dodging a swipe that ripped through a control panel. The pod lights flickered. Alarms rang louder. The temperature dropped even further. It was freezing the air around them. Then suddenly, a flash. Behind the creature, A glowing blue light burst through the inner door. The alien mother stood tall, holding both her daughters. But she looked different. Her eyes glowed brighter than before. Her body shimmered with light beneath her skin. Her breath was no longer weak, but strong, solid. She stepped forward. Jacob shouted, "No, get back!" But she didn't stop. She raised her hand, and then fire, not like human fire. It was cold and blue, swirling like starlight. It blasted forward, wrapping around the predator like a storm. The creature howled. It twisted, turned, but the fire clung to it, burned through it. Its ice armor cracked, its claws melted. Jacob watched in disbelief. She was fighting it with something inside her, some kind of power, ancient, alien, and beautiful. The predator fell to one knee, then another. Then with a final scream, it shattered into ash and frost. Silence. Only the wind remained. The mother collapsed to the ground, breathing hard. Jacob rushed forward and caught her. Her children crawled to her side, hugging her tightly. Jacob looked at her, wide-eyed. What was that?" She smiled faintly. Her lips cracked, but her voice was soft. "The last of what I was, before they made me hide it." Jacob didn't understand everything, but he understood one thing. She had saved them all. He helped her into a seat, wrapped her and the children in heat blankets, and reactivated the emergency beacon. A minute later, the rescue signal pinged. The ship was near, safe was near. He looked at the pod's ruined roof, now open to the sky. The stars peeked through the storm. The rescue ship came just before sunrise. Its lights broke through the storm like twin suns in the sky, cutting the snow and silence in half. The hum of its engines sounded like hope. Jacob stood outside the ruined pod, one hand holding a flare, the other steadying his breath. Behind him, the alien mother sat wrapped in heat blankets. The older child clung to her, head resting on her shoulder. The baby slept in her arms, safe, warm, alive. The storm was finally ending, and so was something else. The fear. The rescue team ran down the ship's ramp, fully suited, weapons drawn. When they saw Jacob, they paused. Then they saw what was behind him and lowered their guns. Jacob raised his hand. "They're not a threat. They're survivors." One medic stepped forward, scanning the family. "Their vitals are weak, but stable." "You did this?" Jacob only nodded. The alien mother looked up at the human rescuers. She didn't speak. She simply placed her hand on Jacob's chest and gave a single respectful nod. It said more than words. She trusted him. He had saved her children. Inside the ship, warm and safe, the alien mother rested in a recovery pod. Her daughters curled up beside her. They no longer cried, they no longer shook. Jacob sat across from them, silent, tired, watching. The lead officer approached. "You risked your life, Jacob. For them. Why?" Jacob stared at the small alien family. "I heard a cry," he said softly. "And no one else came." Later, after the ship took off, Jacob stood by a window and watched the ice planet shrink in the distance. The officer joined him. "Once we scan them, the higher-ups might want to take her in for study. That power she used wasn't normal." Jacob's eyes turned cold. "If they try to harm her or the kids, they'll have to go through me first." The officer raised a brow. "You care that much?" "I didn't just save strangers," Jacob said. "I saved a family." Days passed. The mother healed fast, but quietly. She didn't speak much, but one evening she walked up to Jacob in the ship's garden bay. The baby slept in her arms. The older child held her hand. She stood silently before him. Then she said 2 words in broken English. "We stay?" Jacob froze. "You want to stay? With me?" She nodded. The older child smiled shyly and touched Jacob's sleeve. He knelt down, eye level with her. "You sure about this?" The girl didn't speak, but she wrapped her arms around his neck. That was answer enough. Weeks later, the paperwork was finished. The medical officers approved it. The AI systems cleared their status as refugees. Jacob built a home on a safer planet, a warm one, with trees, rivers, and long sunsets. The alien mother took to gardening. She never said what world she came from, or who tried to bury her in the storm. She didn't have to. That life was behind her. Now, she had a name humans could pronounce. Lura. The older child began speaking slowly, learning Jacob's language. She called him Jay. And the baby? She never left his side. One night, Jacob sat on the porch of his small house. The stars above blinked softly. He held a storybook. The baby sat in his lap. Lura sat beside him. The older child listened quietly as he read in simple, slow English. The tale wasn't about heroes or wars. It was about kindness, about listening to cries in the snow and answering. Lura smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. She whispered, "Storm is gone." Jacob nodded. "It is." Then he looked at the three of them and smiled back. "So is the loneliness."